Hello dear students, today my topic is moral reasoning. Moral reasoning. Since moral reasoning refers to the reasoning process by which human behaviors, institutions, or policies are judged to be in accordance with or in violation of moral standards. Moral development. Since many people assume that our values are formed during childhood and do not change after that, as in fact, a great deal of psychological research, as well as our own personal experience, demonstrates that as we mature, we change our values in deep ways. Since Kohlberg grouped these stages of moral development into 3 levels, each containing 2 stages. At each level, the second stage is the more advanced and organized form of the general perspective of that level. Kohlberg's 3 levels of moral development: sense pre-conventional, sense conventional, sense post-conventional. Sense Kohlberg's theory is useful because it helps us understand how our moral capacities develop and reveals how we may mature in our understanding of our own moral standards. Sense research by Kohlberg and others has shown that, although people generally progress through the stages in the same sequence, not everyone progresses through all the stages. Kohlberg's 3 levels of moral development. Level 1, pre-conventional stages. Since at these first 2 stages, the child can apply the labels good, bad, right, and wrong, but good and bad, and right and wrong are seen in terms of the pleasant or painful consequences of actions or what authority figures demand. If you were to ask a 4 or 5-year-old child, for example, whether stealing is wrong, he will say it is. But when you ask the child why it's wrong, his answer will be something like, "Because mommy puts me in timeout if I steal." The child at this level can see situations mainly from his own point of view, and so his primary motivations are self-centered. Stage 1, punishment and obedience orientation. At this stage, the demands of authority figures or the pleasant or painful consequences of an act define right and wrong. The child's reason for doing the right thing is to avoid punishment or defer to the power of authorities. There's little awareness that others have needs and desires like one's own. Stage 2, instrumental and relative orientation. At this stage, right actions become those through which the child satisfies his own needs. The child is now aware that others have needs and desires like he does and uses this knowledge to get what he wants. The child behaves in the right way toward others, so others later will do the same toward him. Kohlberg's 3 levels of moral development. Level 2, conventional stages. At these next 2 stages, the older child or younger adolescent sees moral right and wrong in terms of living up to the conventional norms of his or her family, peer group, or society. The young person at these stages is loyal to these groups and their norms. He sees right or wrong in terms of what my friends think, what my family taught me, or even what the law says. The person has the ability to take the point of view of other similar people in his groups. Stage 3, interpersonal concordance orientation. Good behavior at this early conventional stage is living up to the expectations of those for whom the person feels loyalty, affection, and trust, such as family and friends. Right action is conforming to what's expected in one's role as a good son, good daughter, good friend, and so on. At this stage, the young person wants to be liked and thought well of. Stage 4, law and order orientation. Right and wrong at this more mature conventional stage are based on loyalty to one's nation or society. The laws and norms of society should be followed so society will continue to function well. The person can see other people as parts of a larger social system that defines individual roles and obligations, and he can distinguish these obligations from what his personal relationships require. Kohlberg's 3 levels of moral development. Since level 3, post-conventional stages. At these next 2 stages, the person no longer simply accepts the values and norms of her group. Instead, the person tries to see right and wrong from an impartial point of view that takes everyone's interest into account. The person can question the laws and values of her society and judge them in terms of moral principles that she believes can be justified to any reasonable person. When an adult at this stage is asked why something is right or wrong, the person can respond in terms of what's fair for everyone or in terms of justice, or human rights, or society's well-being. Stage 5, social contract orientation. At this first post-conventional stage, the person becomes aware that people have conflicting moral views, but believes there are fair ways of reaching consensus about them. The person believes that all moral values and moral norms are relative and that, Apart from a democratic consensus, all moral views should be tolerated. Stage 6, Universal Moral Principles Orientation. At this second post-conventional stage, right action comes to be defined in terms of moral principles chosen because of their reasonableness, universality, and consistency. These are general moral principles that deal, for example, with justice, social welfare, human rights, respect for human dignity, or treating people as ends in themselves. The person sees these principles as the criteria for evaluating all socially accepted norms and values. Criticisms. Kohlberg's theory. Since Kohlberg's theory has, however, been subjected to a number of criticisms. Since Kohlberg has been criticized for claiming that the higher stages are morally preferable to the lower stages. This criticism is surely right. Although the higher Kohlberg levels incorporate broader perspectives and more widely acceptable justifications, it does not follow that these perspectives are morally better than the lower ones. To establish that the higher stages are morally better will require more argument than Kohlberg provides. Since a significant criticism of Kohlberg is one that arises from the work of Gilligan, a psychologist. She argues that, although Kohlberg's theory correctly identifies the stages through which men pass as they develop, it fails to adequately trace out how women's morality develops. Gilligan's theory. Gilligan's theory of female moral development. A sense for women morality is primarily a matter of caring and responsibility. A sense moral development for women is progress toward better ways of caring and being responsible. A sense women move from a conventional stage of caring only for oneself, to a conventional stage of caring for others to the neglect of oneself, to a post-conventional stage of achieving a balance between caring for others and caring for oneself. Psychological research on moral reasoning. Sense suggests that emotions are necessary for moral reasoning. How do our emotions and reasoning work together? Sense consider a simple example. Our emotional reaction, for example, empathy to seeing an old woman in front of us being treated badly, will suddenly focus our attention on her and how she feels and what is happening to her, driving other concerns out of our mind. Since the information we get from this focused perception might then make us feel sympathy, and this may move us to ask ourselves, and reason about, whether she deserves to be treated as she is being treated. Since if we judge that she does not deserve it and is being treated unjustly, we may then feel anger, which drives us to think about what we can do to end the injustice. Sense reasoning about ethics is important, but without emotions we would be unable to become focused on and concerned about ethics and no longer move to engage in moral reasoning about ourselves and those around us. Moral reasoning. Sense moral reasoning refers to the reasoning process by which human behaviors, institutions, or policies are judged to be in accordance with or in violation of moral standards. Sense moral reasoning always involves three components. 1. An understanding of our moral standards and what they require, prohibit, value, or condemn. 2. Evidence or information about whether a particular person, policy, institution, or behavior has the features that these moral standards require, prohibit, value, or condemn. 3. A conclusion or moral judgment that the person, policy, institution, or behavior is prohibited or required, right or wrong, just or unjust, valuable or condemnable, and so on. Minorities live in our society and a disproportionate number fight the wars that keep our society safe. Minorities take the dirty jobs, large percent of cleaners or minorities, who are 1% of the workforce, and contribute cheap labor, farm workers etc. That lets us live and eat disproportionately well, yet minorities do not get society's benefits. Minorities fall below the poverty line compared to general population. Infant mortality is double. A little percent of minorities hold all management positions and engineering jobs. Since discrimination that prevents minorities from getting out of their society what they contribute is unjust. Ethics and business moral standards. Example: a society is unjust if it does not treat minorities equal to whites. Factual information concerning the policy, institution, or behavior under consideration. Example: in American society, 26% of blacks fall below the poverty line as compared with 12% of whites. Moral judgment on the rightness or wrongness of the policy, institution, or behavior. Example: American society is unjust, Moral reasoning should a sense be logical, a sense rely on evidence or information that is accurate, relevant, and complete, a sense be consistent. A person is morally responsible for an injury only if, a sense person caused or helped cause the injury, or failed to prevent it when he or she could and should have. A sense person did so knowing what he or she was doing. A sense person did so of his or her own free will. Some questions are here to discuss.